Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to put a quick video up today. I wanted to talk about the current housing situation. Someone might call it a housing crisis or housing bubble, and they certainly wouldn't be wrong in some respects. So I just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about what's happening. Interesting night for me last night. I had a listing that I put on. The conversation about a year ago this time was the price would be about $1 million for the sale. So we'd probably price in and around that range because a year ago, we were listing homes for what we felt they were worth, and the market would respond accordingly. This year, however, as we know, has been on fire, and everything seems upside down, where people will put a house on, they'll list it at what it should have sold for last year, and then of course they get multiple offers, and you end up having prices go well above and beyond. So in my scenario, the house we listed was put on at $999. And that was good for what happened a year ago. And yes, we were expecting multiple offers. The neighbor a couple doors down put the exact same home on with similar but a little bit higher level upgrades. And they ended up getting an offer for $1.5 million. And it was preemptive, meaning it was put in before the set date for offers. You can imagine what that did in terms of buyers' mindset and just the market as a whole. It got 50% year over year increase from what it should have sold for last year. It absolutely blew everyone away. And the net result of that was I had a lot of agents who had shown my listing, which is very comparable. And they basically said, hey, listen, that sale price scared us away. My buyers are actually reluctant and hesitant to put an offer in because if that's what these houses are selling for, we don't want to play in that game. That's above and beyond what we were anticipating. And quite honestly, myself and many colleagues who reached out to me about the sale, asking about my listing, we all felt the same. So I wanted to share some stats with you about what's happening right now in the overall Canadian marketplace, just to give you some information. You know, you hear from all sorts of different sources, but I just wanted to take a really high level macro look at this marketplace we're in. So what we've seen in average on Canada, okay, these are Canadian figures, so yes, there's going to be various markets where it's not quite the case, but on the whole, we've seen an average housing price increase of $65,000 year over year, okay? There's been a decrease of $100 billion of economic output. I don't have to tell everyone what we're dealing with. We've got COVID, we're in the third wave now. You can imagine how incredibly destructive that's been on our GDP and our overall situation when it comes to revenue for the Canadian federal government. There's hundreds and thousands have lost their paychecks. There's been job loss. Small businesses have been crushed. People are fighting. They're struggling to survive right now. And we're all financing this through deficit spending, debt financing, and that's all going to the bottom line. So where's all this going to go? We know next year for sure there's going to be an increased cost of living because of tax hikes. There's going to be what they'll call carbon tax credits, which is going to go into general coffers to support offset these deficits. There's going to be an increased cost of goods and services, your food, your clothing, your heat, your hydro, everything. And I'm not sharing this to depress or upset anybody, but these are the harsh realities of what's happening when you get the perfect storm. And this is what's creating a housing bubble. Real estate has remained the backbone of economic activity in almost every community throughout Canada, whether it's foreign investment into Canada for safe, secure, a place to store their money and a tax haven, whatever the case is, or just because there's bricks and mortar there to back things up. It's really gone off the rails right now. So, despite all these statistics, it's interesting that we've found all this money to buy real estate and continue to purchase homes at these astronomical price points. 2019 to 2020, our inflation has been worth more than our entire economy has. So what that basically means, for those of you who don't know about how the fiscal policies and economics work, basically inflation has increased more than all the money we've brought in, okay? So we have 2.7 trillion of asset inflation in an economy worth 2 trillion. So that's every year gaining more in house appreciation than the average Canadian earns in their annual salary. The average Canadian, I believe, earns about $45K a year. So we're talking about 65,000 year over year increase across Canada. So your house is actually appreciating more than you're working from January 1st to December 31st. Think about that for a minute, okay? Obviously, we know this bubble can't last forever. And bear in mind, all of this is occurring in historically low interest rates. The mortgage rate environment right now It's basically free money. They've got to keep it there to maintain what's going on. Now, the lower the interest rate, the lower the cost of borrowing, the inverse effect would be an increase in housing prices, because the affordability goes up, so that pushes price point up. So we've kind of created our own situation. Just another interesting stat here I came across was that the CMHC says buyers should spend more than 30% of their gross income on their housing expense and their budget. Okay, 30%. RBC data shows currently Canadians on average are spending 50%. So half their paycheck, their gross paycheck, is going towards the cost of housing. That's a frightening statistic. So 20% more of Canadian families' budget is going into housing costs. So what is happening to the kids? Retirement savings, debt pay down, emergency contingency funds, you name it. Think about that for a minute and the effect that's having. Lastly, I'm thinking in broader terms. When we look at our government policies right now, Trudeau has mentioned he's got an initiative for the next 3 years to bring 400,000 immigrants in every year for the next 3 years, totaling 1.2 million new people to Canada. Of those 400,000 annually, he said that 260,000 of them would be people who are dependent upon the system. So maybe coming in without skill sets, or they're not readily set to go into the workforce. So they're basically going to be pulling on our social services, which is great, but under the current circumstances, it's going to put an additional burden, additional strain, and additional cost on the bottom line. So I as mentioned, you can definitely anticipate between COVID and everything else going on, the debt load, the deficit we're in, that there's going to be an increased cost of taxes, cost of living, and just overall pressure on Canadian families to kind of weather through this. And not to mention those first-time home buyers who are looking at getting into the housing market. Can you imagine how daunting it would be if every time you go to put an offer in, you're faced with a situation where you're competing with 6 to 12 buyers, and people are paying, in the case of this example I cited at the top, $500,000 over what the market dictates the house should sell for. You know, there's always going to be people who can do that for whatever reasons they choose, but sometimes you do win the battle and lose the war. I suspect that those buyers might find themselves regretting that decision, because just a slight ratchet up of those interest rates is going to have a tremendous effect on their monthly payment. So we're in a really interesting time right now, guys. I wanted to put a little video up here just with some stats and some info for you. Is real estate still a great investment? By far, I would say it's the best investment, just because historically it's proven time and again to withstand all the market fluctuations and the volatility. The great thing about Canada is we do have checks and balances in our financial system, so we're not going to see, or we haven't seen yet, a meltdown like 2008 presented in the States, where people were leveraged to the hilt and they literally had no equity in their homes and they were getting multiple mortgages. And that level of exposure we won't see in Canada because of our CMHC and our underwriting process that we have to undertake here. So can you buy right now? Yes, you can. You've got to be really strategic. If you're selling and you're going to a down market, or you're doing a lateral move, I mean, absolutely. You've got to be really wise. I do feel a shift in the market. I had a bunch of calls this morning, which also prompted me to do this video, from other agents inquiring about how I did on the sale last night relative to the 1.5 million sale. So how did we do? We did excellent compared to what we had discussed and what our expectations were. Certainly the other one was an anomaly. And in talking with some of my colleagues today, the general consensus is there has been a shift right now. It's undertaking right now. Things are moving in another direction. People just can't weather these market conditions anymore. They can't sustain these price points. So I think what we're going to see now is a shift in the direction of no more multiple offers. I think what's going to happen is people are going to start asking a price for what they think it's worth. So I would call that a selling price versus a marketing price. So rather than going really low and trying to get a bunch of people to put an offer in, I think people are just going to ask what they feel their homes are worth. So if you're thinking about making a move in this market, or you have questions, I know I threw a lot out there in this video. Hope it was of value to you. If you do, feel free to share. By all means, ask me questions. It's really important you get local area market data and real-time reporting and information, because busy realtors have great information. They can see it, they can feel it, and they've got their thumb on the pulse of the activity. So give me a call anytime. And don't forget, get the Abbott Advantage and inform yourself. Protect your hard-earned investment. Have a great day, everyone. All the best.